I'd say 90% of them are probably going to start to blow up next year.
What do you got, Chamath?
Well, I guess I'm fading you guys, and I'm also fading implicitly Friedberg's pick of Stripe. But my biggest business loser for 2022 is Visa and MasterCard and traditional payment rails and the entire ecosystem around it. So I think that this is the year you can put on what probably will be the most profitable spread trade of my lifetime.
But, I tried to highlight and continue my kind of contrarian bet that we're going to see increased global conflict next year, again, driven by, incumbents trying to hold on to political office and increase inflation and fueling economic growth and the American response to China. So in a world of increased global conflict, I think assets that do really well are energy commodities and energy stocks. I recently made a big bet on energy stocks, defense stocks, and it used to be gold. It could be the case that Bitcoin, sees a role as being a defensive position in portfolios in a world of war and conflict. So those are my kind of macro themes for asset.
The companies you want to be long are those private companies in crypto that you can read the white papers of, whose protocols have utility, and who's building some element of infrastructure that replaces a traditional business. So as long as you can kind of build those things up, Balaji, for example, had a bunch of tweets this weekend where he was like, he has this idea for a mirror table. What is that? That replaces, cap table management. Right now, why is that important? Well, it's because it touches all of these really important KYC, AML, investing laws across all these countries in all of these places. It's just a very simple example of where the new company that actually builds that capability of these mirror tables will do so at virtually no cost. And so it'll have a 50-person team. And so they're not going to have offices all over the world. Their cost basis will be, an order or two orders of magnitude cheaper.
Let's face it, Visa and MasterCard became a tax. It took them
decades and
decades to have that power over folks. But I think a firm does break that. A firm breaks it because the people who are selling then decide, you know what? We'll give a little bit of a discount here to get more people to buy. Go ahead.
They were the classic network effect monopoly business, right? Like they got the small businesses, they got the credit cards, and by extension, the consumers on the network. And ultimately, they created these absolutely locked in networks. But as with all networks, complacency kind of, drives innovation, and this fueled innovation that we're seeing is now starting to figure out ways to not just crack their way into the network, but to replace them with an entirely different model.
Last point on this. This is not one where I think this disruption happens slow. I think it happens swiftly.
Swiftly being 5 to 10 years?
No, like in a year.
Yeah, Chamath's point is really interesting because there are several billion people globally who do not have credit and who are unbanked. And so if you think about where this is more likely to come from, it's more likely to come from an innovative model in those markets that then ultimately finds its way into the developed world versus, trying to break apart Visa and MasterCard and go get these small businesses to switch out of them and so on. Today. So it's a really interesting point.
Okay, Sachs, what do you got?
I don't know if it's biggest loser, but the thing I'm most worried about is in 2022, the Fed is going to stop quantitative easing, or so they have said. I guess March will be the last month in which they do this QE. So starting in April, there won't be any of this liquidity pumped into the system. And so I think the losers are going to be any of these asset classes that are heavily dependent on or have benefited from all this excess liquidity sloshing through the system. It's true that the stock market, I think, has already priced in rate increases and an increase in the discount rate, but I don't know if markets can fully price in a reduction in liquidity. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. And so if liquidity is reduced next year, I think that could reverberate through a bunch of markets, including, everything from sports cards, and collectibles, which have gone through the roof, to art, to crypto, to, maybe some growth stocks, and on it goes. So that's my biggest worry is what happens when the Fed stops QE. And
so the biggest loser is markets because of quantitative easing.
The markets that have to get off drugs, basically. Yeah, I mean, so I have a couple of them here, actually.
You want to wait and go after everybody else?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't even know if this is contrarian or just unconventional, but I think that all of this pressure on the progressive left will manifest in the chosen one, AOC, deciding to step up and run against Schumer in the primary in June of 2022. And she will lose.
Wow.
That's a good prediction.
I like Chamath's prediction.
That's a bold one, yeah. That she would lose is bold.
Well, sorry, just to give a little bit of color in this, like let's just assume that she doesn't, right? And you know, she shouldn't. But think about where she's sitting. Build Back Better is over. There's an enormous amount of stuff happening right now where, you know, it looks like the progressive left is really going to be put under pressure. And it's almost as if she's really going to be the standard bearer and she needs to do something quickly. Otherwise, she's going to have to wait until she's 38. You know, she's, you know, another 6 years from now, because it's not unlikely that she's going to run against Kirsten Gillibrand. So this is kind of like, it may be a moment where out of her sheer frustration, she steps up. And then we will see whether Freeberg is right or I'm right, whether the populism is really around the left or the populism is really around the silent majority.
What do you got? Sachs.
I think that's a very good prediction. In a similar way, I predict that there will be a strange new respect for Bill Clinton in the Democratic Party by the end of next year. Why? Because after the red wave, there'll be a recognition that they need to move towards the center. They need to triangulate. And Clinton was the one who provided the formula for doing this. He dragged the Democratic Party back to the center after they were losing elections. And the other piece of this is going to be that it's already the case in polling that Hispanics and Asian Americans now are swing voters. And I think you're going to see in November 2022 that they go for Republicans in big numbers. And so the idea that the Democratic Party can just coast to election based on demographics, I think that theory is going to be imperiled.
Yeah,
and
I
so,
like it.
And so they're going to be looking to Clinton and maybe not so much Obama as sort of the predicate they should be, you know, aspiring to in the future.
I think what's important about that is those groups of people, I think, are offended by the free money, get something for nothing. They're hardworking immigrant people who have pride. They don't want handouts.
You know, and it probably pissed off a lot of unions who would have loved to have just had a positive test and stay home forever. The teachers unions, particularly. Here we are. So This is a really tough situation.
Well, and look, and to be clear, the message that the media is going to deliver about COVID next year, it'll be the first time I agree with it. But it's completely dishonest of them to pretend like they were never in favor of lockdowns, and they completely inflated the threat and created this whole hysteria. And next year they're going to have to back off it.
But also take into account,
no politician can end it.
Take into account, Sachs.
Broadly speaking, about everything.